Most of what you call knowing is just a memory repeating itself with confidence. And that very confidence is exactly what keeps you blind. Today we're looking at lesson number 3. I do not understand anything I see. In lesson 1, we said that the world has no inherent meaning. In lesson 2, we revealed that the meaning that we see in the world comes from within, from ourselves. And everything that follows lesson 2 is just us learning not to be afraid of this fact. So in lesson 3, we are coming to this realization that we have been mistaking recognition for understanding, and thus living inside of conclusions that we never questioned. This is the opportunity that lesson 3 reveals. The ego doesn't object to meaning. It objects to admitting that it doesn't know. Yeah? So lesson 3 targets a deeper layer of this egoic structure than the previous ones. If lesson 2 exposed to us that it is you who assign meaning, then lesson 3 dismantles the belief that your meanings are actually accurate. Yeah? Take a moment to consider this, that this projection mechanism within the mind that is labeling and describing everything that you see is actually founded on false sense of understanding, a false map of reality. So the perceptual error that is being undone is this. It's that we think familiarity equals understanding, and familiarity does not equal understanding. You believe that maybe because something feels known, that it is known. And maybe because you've reacted 1,000 times in a certain way, then you must be right in that reaction. But again, what we call human understanding is simply memory performing itself again and again. We can take a look at different areas of our life, like, for example, our intimate relationships, where we feel like we know a person so deeply, right? But really we recognize patterns and we predict outcomes. And sometimes we're completely wrong. We might think that we understand our child, but all we're doing is we're overlaying our past, our fears, our hope, and then seeing the child as an actor in these scripts that we project onto them. So we have to be aware that we don't even understand ourself. What does it mean to say that you don't understand yourself? What it means is that you rehearse a narrative inside your own mind and simply call it identity. That narrative is a story, a collection of words that came from this world. It's not who you are. You existed prior to knowing any of the words of this world. And thus your existential, foundational identity has nothing to do with what can be described in language. So we come to this realization that emotion, of course, is not evidence. An intensity that we might feel doesn't equal to clarity. And certainly we know that history or the past is not the author of truth. So this lesson strips away that arrogance of the mind, the assumption that it knows what things are for, what they mean, or what they will do. The instruction is essentially to treat emotionally charged objects the same as neutral ones. Why? Because it removes the ego's strongest defense. Think about what that is. the ego's strongest defense is this. It says, but this one is different. But this time is different. Remember from the text how it talks about the ego has an ethos that goes something like this: seek but do not find. And so it creates the illusion of something new, the illusion of change, but at the core, it remains exactly the same. Okay, so now let's bring on peace. And I want to ask you, lesson 1, we looked at how it said that nothing I see means anything. In lesson 2, we said that I gave everything that I see all the meaning that it has for me. Now, what does lesson 3 undo next when we say, I don't understand anything I see?
Interesting. So if the first lesson loosened meaning and the second revealed authorship, this one feels like it's chipping away at the illusion of comprehension itself. Like we think we get what we're seeing, but this lesson suggests that's also not true. What feels like the core unraveling here to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's pointing out to the illusion of comprehension and how our mind is addicted to this sense of basically labeling and, in essence, I would say almost controlling everything, right? What is it that is the actual, mechanism behind the labeling and the constant storytelling and description? What do you think is at the core and really driving that process?
So it's not just about assigning meaning, it's about the need to narrate. Like we can't just let things be without building a whole story around them. Feels like a pretty deep need for control. Yeah? I wonder if it's about a fear of chaos. Like if things aren't neatly categorized, there's a sense of losing ground. What feels threatened by the lack of understanding?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that it's the very core of fear, right? If I don't understand, then I am in this space of unknown. And I think that that's what the ego fears most of all, is the unknown. And so it rushes in to fill that seemingly blank space of the unknown with its own definitions, giving it the illusion of control.
That makes a lot of sense. So, the understanding isn't about truth. It's about maintaining a sense of safety. Like the story is a shield against the void. It feels almost desperate, that drive to define everything. Feel like a lonely process, all that labeling, like constructing a whole reality single-handedly.
Yeah, it's definitely a process of separation. And I guess that this is, like separation from reality and separation from each other even. Because if we really zoom out and consider it, isn't that what conflict really is when people's stories or narratives or definitions or what they call their understanding doesn't line up?
True. It's like everyone's walking around in their own self-made movie and then getting annoyed when other people aren't reacting to their plotline. It really does make conflict feel inevitable, doesn't it? So, if understanding itself is the problem, what's left? Is there anything beyond this story?
Well, actually, I think there's a whole world beyond the story. All of the infinite creation is beyond the story. The story is, as we discussed earlier, and you used a really cool metaphor. You said, it's like we're playing a movie in our mind and then watching this movie. And right now you even pointed out that we get upset when people are not following our plot lines. So beyond that story is reality. is the direct contact with what is, and what is defined by the Creator and not by our mentation.
Right. So the story isn't reality, it's a filter. And the more we identify with the filter, the more we miss what's actually there. Feels like pretty active forgetting. Does that forgetting feel intentional somehow? Like the ego isn't just defending, it's actively obscuring?
Yeah, I would say that that's pretty accurate. It's actively obscuring a much bigger world than it can ever comprehend. Let's take a look
at bigger.
Yeah, let's take a look at this in like a concrete example. Like, for example, parenting, right? That's a big one. Many parents think that they have to know or demonstrate some kind of knowledge or somehow be, superior in their understanding than their child. But, what changes in that kind of dynamic if I admit that I don't actually understand this situation?
That's a really good one. Because it feels like parenting is built on the illusion of understanding. Like, you're supposed to have all the answers. But what shifts when you just drop that pretense? Does it create space for actual connection instead of just control? Does it feel terrifying, though, to admit not knowing when someone is relying on you to know?
To me, it feels actually relaxing. Like we can finally relax into simply being and discovering together instead of me pretending that I know something greater than my son would know.
That's really beautiful. Like surrendering the role of the expert and just becoming a fellow traveler, a co-learner. Does that feel like a more honest space? Does that honesty impact the quality of the connection?
I think so. I think whenever we drop pretense in our relationships to each other, whether in the parenting context or beyond, then of course we can have that much deeper sense of connection. As we're talking about this, I am thinking about, this word understanding. And if it's clear that I don't understand anything I see, then what does understand?
Oof. That's a good question. If not me, then they. What? Does something else understand? Or is understanding not even the right word? Like maybe witnessing is closer? Like something is simply aware without needing to categorize or explain? Does that feel like a shift in perspective from active knowing to passive seeing?
Yeah, perhaps we can say that awareness kind of replaces this neurotic sense of needing to label and define everything. But I think there's even deeper than that, because, we're essentially opening up this portal to the level of being, and something is being the self, right? Something is being all that exists. And that sense of being all that is, I think you're right, is a very different way of knowing that is not necessarily understanding.
So, it's not about acquiring information, but about recognizing what already is. Like not creating understanding, but removing the obstacles to it. It feels almost lazy in a good way, just letting it be. Does it feel like effortlessness when you let go of the need to understand? Or is there still a subtle resistance?
When I consciously release the need to understand. There is no subtle resistance. But I would imagine that, we can kind of term the the automatic grasping back at the need to understand and define that I can also be aware of in my mind as resistance. So there's certainly that process, and this is the process that we're working with the lessons to help to essentially loosen and help us to see in a different way. One thing... Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, so it's not about eliminating the urge to understand, because that urge will probably always be there, but about noticing it, recognizing it as a pattern, and choosing not to get swept away by it. Like seeing the hand reach for the label, but not actually grabbing it. Does that feel right?
I think it's more like what you said before, is that it's simply a process of noticing. The noticing of this illusion of understanding, but now knowing it as illusion instead of assuming that it is factual and real and solid and, serious. Instead, we can begin to see that this level of understanding that we humanly call understanding, this story in the mind that we tell ourselves about what we see, is more like a child describing the world of make-believe as they are pretending to be one of the characters in that world. It is relative, but at the same time, unreal.
That's a brilliant image. A child lost in make-believe. Totally invested, completely real to them, but ultimately not tethered to anything concrete. And recognizing that it's all make-believe doesn't invalidate the experience. It just feels like a lot of freedom in that shift. So, what feels like the biggest takeaway from lesson 3 then? The most potent realization?
Yeah, this is something I want to also bring back to you, but I would put it like this. In the first lesson, we worked at removing the inherent meaning as if it were out there. In lesson 2, we brought that sense of authorship about the meaning back in from the external world to the mind. But now in lesson 3, we're working on removing the authority of the mind itself. So from here on, we're essentially looking at what the Course is really teaching us to do, which is seeing without the filter that the mind might call knowing or understanding or that meaning-making mechanism. So now, love to hear from you. What do you see as the most core, foundational, transformational, let's say, essence of this lesson?
That's the big question. I mean, given everything we've just talked about, it feels like the core of it is surrender. Surrendering the need to control, to define, to even know. It's about trusting that something is already there underneath all the stories. That the effort isn't in grasping it, but in simply letting it be seen. It feels incredibly vulnerable, but also incredibly liberating. Does that resonate?
Yeah, that's very, very well put. So, as we close this session, I want to invite you as the listener to take a deep breath and release the cognitive engagement with this lesson. Let your awareness open instead to the holy instant that is here and now, inviting you into the truth that makes you free. And now, let us go into the silence.